Look at this. We got a friend here on the show. So excited that Courtney is joining me. Yeah. So I still wish sometimes that you could like see the pre-show. Like someone needs to record the pre-show of the stuff that we hear before we go live. It's like more entertaining than the actual show, I think. So
that was super fun. Yeah, I'm super into that. That was so much fun.
That was awesome. She's like, let's do this every week. We could totally make our own show, Court. Just so you know. So anyways, I have a guest here. Her name is Court Burns, and she is from Bravely Beautiful brand in Instagram world. Instagram land is where I met Court. I don't even know how I found you or you found me or vice versa. I don't even know what happened, but it was kismet. It was like the universe is like, these two chicks got to meet. And when I met you, it wasn't for the reason that we're meeting now, right? Because I think it's been around a year where I saw you and I'm like, this girl's energy is off the charts. So I think I had you on my podcast first, Elevate Her Soul podcast, and that was really fun doing that. Mm-hmm. And then over recent events, you've evolved. I watched your evolvement. So I'm kind of like the mom watching the little chick grow up and like do all these amazing things and just cheering you on the whole time. And now you've gone from YouTube, I mean, you still do YouTube videos, but when I saw you, you were talking about your journey as a human on this planet, your struggles, your vulnerability, and that's what drew me to you. And now you're doing something even cooler, which is we need to talk about, which we're going to talk about, is the astrology part.
Yes! My favorite thing in the whole world is astrology. Like, well, I mean, other than like mediumship, but I'm not quite on that level yet. But I love everything that you just said. I mean, when we met, I think it was just through a mutual friend on Instagram. And I was like, yeah, Jen is so cool. And then we were on the same podcast, or you had me on your podcast. But the evolution of this to now being like an astrologer is insane. So thank you so much for everything. Having me here. I'm obsessed with
course.
First, so,
well, you're my first guest, and I'm honored to have you as the first guest. Like, you're the only choice, but I'm like, I had this idea to have a mystery guest on here, and I'm like, ooh, who should the mystery guest be? I didn't even have to think about it. I knew it was going to be you, because you just have, people need to know you. People need to meet you more than they already do know, and I like to call it Instagram land. But I do want to share the astrology part, because what happened was, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show is because I actually had my birth chart read. Now, if you've never had your birth chart read before, I highly recommend doing that, especially with Court, because it's either going, and you can explain a little bit more how it technically works, but for me, if you don't know what your life path is or what you're here to do, it will save you from a lot of mishaps and mistakes and wrong paths, because the birth chart will show you what you're actually here to do. And then for someone like me, who is always kind of really pretty strong in the knowing of what I'm here to do, gets major validation of why I'm so drawn to the spotlight and, wanting the goal that I have makes so much sense, because it was in the birth chart. I was like, that just changed the game for me. So if you want to explain a little bit about, sort of that part of the birth chart.
Yeah. I mean, so like when I explain what a birth chart is, essentially it's like a map of your soul. And that's one of the coolest things about astrology. Astrology isn't just horoscopes. Those things are fun to go read. And we all, like a gateway, like to learn about your horoscope is amazing. But then to actually look at your birth chart and how the planets were when you were born and all this stuff, it gives you an indicator, and to have somebody read it, it shows where you can go in this lifetime, maybe some challenges you might have. And then, like you said, validation in the path that maybe you already were thinking about, because like a lot of people, they have these big dreams, and then there's the human brain that gets in the way. That's like, oh, well, I can't do that. But actually you can, because it's like in your birth chart. So to have that and then be able to use that as a tool to say, oh, like this is part of me, or this is something I have to work on, then why wouldn't you want that?
Saves you a lot of time.
Right?
Really. Seriously, right? And so that was just such an eye-opening thing for me. I know there's other facets, obviously, and it's very technical. And that leads to one of my questions, but it was just it just gave me the confidence to fully step into that. Right? Because I'm like, it did. Like, there was a shift right after I had this birth chart that I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm actually here to do. I might as well own it. And like actually started owning it instead of going, oh no, I can't do that, right? So one of my questions that came through from Spirit for you is astrology or the birth chart, is that science or is that spirit?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So I technically consider myself to be an intuitive astrologer. So when I read the birth chart, I am taking the knowledge of astrology, which is Western. I read Western astrology, and from the science that backs it up. And then I also leave room for spirit to come in, and also my intuition, so that I'm kind of pairing them together. So essentially, I'm reading energy and understanding science. That's a really good question. I think it's an intuitive science, to be honest. But
Ooh, I like that. It's like a mishmash. It's like kind of like both an intuitive science. Like some nerdy scientist right now is like, what do you mean intuitive science? That's not a thing. Yeah. What is she talking about? If I can't touch it or see it or pull it apart and look at the cells in it under a microscope, it's not science.
100%.
Right? Yeah. So I love that because, go ahead.
But it's a good thing we're on psychic radio. I feel like people would understand this. But the more that we open our minds and have an idea of like, everybody wants to know about themselves, like straight up. That's the thing. I used to I would go out with friends and I would pull up birth charts and like every single person would be like, that's not real. And I would be like, well, let me just tell you about yourself. And they would be into it. So all it takes is an open mind to learn something new. And that is what in a beautiful part of astrology is that it pairs two things together. It's like this science and also like, just like, I don't know, spiritual tool to have.
Right. And you know me, like I'm no logic at all. And I'm all spirit. Like my whole life is spirit led. There's no science involved or logic or anything. So this is right up my alley. But the question just sort of popped in my head. Thinking about what I wanted to share, like to talk about with you, is it science or spirit? So I love that it's like a mixture of both, and it's kind of like intertwined, which is kind of like not logical when you think about it, right? Which I love. No logic at all.
No. My new thing is defy logic. Like I feel like anytime that there's something that, especially with the stars, it's like if you think back to years and years ago before you and I were even here, there was the stars in the sky. That was there. So it's like to be able to study and understand that there's things that happen in the sky, in the moon. Like we've got a full moon coming up that, the planets do different things and they impact our emotional body. It's such a powerful tool. So I'm 100% about it.
Love it. So do you want to share a little snippet of what that current energy is? Because you were mentioning that mediums and psychic can tap into the energy, but they don't know the astrology star part of it. So do you want to kind of share what's happening?
Yeah, that's actually a really good point too, before I go into what's coming up. I find it very interesting, and this is why I liked reading your chart, is to see where mediums, psychics, they have certain placements in their charts that actually really kind of say that they have not an extra sense, but there's something there that they can tap into. And we all have this, but sometimes psychics and mediums have the more clustered energy in certain parts. So we're seeing this as well with a lot of kids who are being born now, a lot of these placements. And with that being said, as we've come up a year like 2020, where all of this energy has been flying around like, I don't even know what, then ultimately we're learning how to use the energy, how to read it, how to sit with it, et cetera, et cetera. So now we've got a full moon coming up, and it's a full moon in Virgo. And essentially that's going to happen on the 27th. And when we take that, we understand that Virgo is all about this cleansing, decluttering, setting up space for new things. And a full moon is a purge, a release. So we can use that energy to our advantage.
Yeah, you make me nervous with that, because I feel like I can feel things happening in a non-astrology way, an energetic way, and then I check in with you and I'm like DMing you. I'm like, okay, what is happening? Because I just felt it at 4 p.m. and then you're like, oh, this is happening, this happened. And it actually goes along with the shift, the energy shift. That's actually, you can feel pressure or energy building. And if you're very sensitive, you have to be very sensitive. If you're not, you're like, I don't even know what she's talking about, but you can feel it coming in. It's just powerful stuff.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And it's the more that you become aware of who you are, AKA reading a birth chart or whatever, having someone read it for you, the more you become aware, it's the more in tune you are with your feelings and emotions. And then that is how you start to understand how to use this energy not only to your advantage, but to empathize with other people, to have compassion for what you're feeling and going through. And like, I mean, we could all use a little more of that. So,
right. I'm going to say, before I met Court, I was, had a stigma against Aquariuses. And then I was like, oh, you just undid all of that negativity I had against, right? Because some signs have different things to it, right? But yeah, so you changed my whole perspective on all of this and putting intuition, science, logic, stars, everything together and making something really amazing. And I just want to thank you for that, because you actually gave me the guts to go full steam ahead. So that being said, if you want to go get in touch with Court, go over to Instagram for sure, where you're the most active, right? So that is Bravely Beautiful Brand.
Yep.
Yes. So it's really easy to find her over there. She's very good at Instagram. I know that's not that normal thing you say. Old people say that. She's very good at Instagram, okay?
I do really like it. I love creating content, and I like try to put out horoscopes for the month. And so, yeah, you can go and check yours out based on your sign. And DM me. Yeah. I love to chat.
DM me. You're so like dirty. Like, go DM me. And I'm like, send me an email and a text, but don't call me.
Right.
But thank you so much for being on the show. I know I wish it was longer. I could talk to you for hours and hours, and maybe we'll have to do another podcast episode. An Elevate Her Soul podcast, part 2 with Court. And everyone needs to go and check out Courtney. Thank you, everyone, so much again for watching the show. I want to do something different when the show. I want to share all my peeps. I want to share the love. I want to share this amazing information that's out there. And I can't wait to do this again.
Yay! Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay.